thousands of people have mysteriously vanished in America's wilderness. Join us as we dive into the deep end of the unexplainable and try to piece together what happened. You are listening to Locations Unknown. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Locations Unknown. I'm your co-host, Joe Irado, and with me, as always, is a guy who can burn things with a magnifying glass at night, Mike Vandebogart.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you to everyone that's tuning in once again to Locations Unknown. No new updates this time, but I'm just happy to see that society's starting to open up again, and businesses are slowly reopening here in Milwaukee, Joe. Tomorrow, bars are opening for the first time.
Well,
in several months.
All right.
So, excited. How's it going on your end?
We might have to do an episode after a night out at the bars.
Oh, man, that would be messy.
It'd be not much different than our normal episodes.
I guess.
No, I'm glad we're slowly getting back to reality, barring all the craziness that's happening outside of the craziness that was already happening, and hopefully no new craziness happens.
I am just ready to write 2020 off.
Yep. Well, let's get into this case, and you can just think about something other than politics and all the crap that's going on.
Exactly.
All right, everybody, let's gear up and get out to explore Locations Unknown. June 11th, 1998, 38-year-old Jonathan Aujay traveled into the Devil's Punchbowl natural area, northeast of downtown Los Angeles in Antelope Valley, to go for a trail run. Many witnesses report seeing Jonathan that day. However, he never returned home. Join us this week as we investigate what happened to Deputy Jonathan Aujay in a possible conspiracy that points to his disappearance.
The Devil's Punchbowl Natural Area is a Los Angeles County park. It's also within the San Gabriel Mountain National Monument area and is a part of the Angeles National Forest. So if you look at a map, it's actually surprisingly close to downtown LA.
Close to downtown LA.
It always shocks me when you look at a map of the greater LA metro area, how much natural space they do have kind of mixed in with extremely dense city.
Oh, and it's so dense.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that to be a joke. I'm just saying there's so many people crammed in there, and there's so much nature just right outside of it.
It really is amazing. I think out of all the big cities in the U.S., I think LA has probably got some of the most amazing natural areas that close to downtown. So
yeah,
this is another one of them, Devil's Punchbowl. So it is located south of the Pear Blossom Highway, which is California Route 138, near the towns of Little Rock and Pear Blossom. The Devil's Punchbowl Nature Center is operated by the Los Angeles County Department of Parks and Recreation. That would be the sister group to Pawnee.
There you go.
Just kidding.
And as you were reading off the road too, I don't know if some people are either too young or don't remember the SNL skits of the Californians.
I don't even remember that.
When it's just a bunch of surfer guys and they talk about California and they just over discuss how to get to places.
Oh, I do remember that.
Yeah, it's just take the Pear Blossom Highway down CA Route 138 near the towns of Little Rock and Pear Blossom, and you'd be right there, man.
I do remember that now. That is pretty funny.
Okay, go on. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, that's a funny little clip. I'll have to watch that later. So like I said, the Devil's Punchbowl Nature Center focuses on flora, fauna, and geological features of the park. And the center offers school programs, parties, guided park tours, as well as telescope programs with an 11-inch telescope. So it sounds like a pretty cool place if you've got young kids. And like we said, it's pretty much right in LA. So the primary attractions of the park are its geological formations, including the Punchbowl Formation of the Neogene period. If you've seen pictures of this, it's literally like someone punched a big hole in the ground and there's a fountain, like a waterfall going into it.
Yeah, the whole area is pretty cool looking.
The Punchbowl is a deep canyon categorized by its plunging syncline. I don't know if I said that right, Joe.
Yeah, no, that's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
A V-shaped folding of the Earth's strata caused by compression.
So just like you said, he punched the earth in.
Exactly, yeah. So the mountain peaks above the park are about 8,000 feet in elevation compared to the park's nature center at 4,700 feet above sea level. The Punchbowl Canyon is 300 feet deep at the Vista Point. So, nothing I think you'd be worried about as far as terrain. 8,000 feet is still
but you're starting
enough.
at 4,700, so it's not too gnarly.
No. And the weather in Southern California is, pretty awesome year round. So I don't think exposure is going to be a huge issue.
Well, it could, it's just like the hot, dry, desert-ish type heat midday.
Yep.
But it's not like major desert, like in Joshua Tree or something like that.
Yeah. Like Joe said, the weather for the area is warmer throughout the year, typical, Southern California desert, hot and dry. So that's kind of a summary of the Devil's Punchbowl area, and I'm going to jump right into the character profile of John. John was a canine unit dog handler with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. He was a member of the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Special Enforcement Bureau. Before that, he had been a paratrooper in the Army Special Forces. So
this guy was no joke.
This guy's no joke. I'd say he's highly trained, probably very disciplined, and probably great physical condition. He sounds like kind of one of your super cops.
Yeah.
So the Special Enforcement Bureau handles SWAT and canine operations for the Sheriff's Department, and they also negotiate hostage situations and serve warrants. So John worked nights so he could be in the thick of the action, and he was reliable and conscientious, seldom calling in sick or using his vacation time. So he's highly trained, great physical condition, and has a tremendous work ethic. Sounds like just an all-around great
G.I.
cop.
Joe?
Yeah, G.I. Joe. G.I. John. So John was 6 feet tall, weighed approximately 165 pounds at the time he went missing. He had brown hair and brown eyes and was wearing olive green shorts with pockets, a light-colored shirt, hiking boots, black crew socks, and a blue and white or green and white baseball cap. He was also wearing a Casio brand running watch, black oval-shaped sunglasses, and he was carrying a forest green JanSport brand day pack. John was an avid runner and outdoorsman. He regularly traveled to the Sierra on weekends for hiking and camping trips, and he had staged more than 10 climbing expeditions on Mount Whitney, the highest peak in the lower 48. So this just goes back into what I would say he's not only highly trained from a law enforcement perspective, but he also seems highly trained in the backcountry.
Yeah, he knows his surroundings. He's familiar with that type of climate and stuff.
He can hike, he can climb, he can pretty much do it all.
Yeah.
So as a member of the SEB running team, he competed against other local law enforcement agencies, and he also ran in individual races. The previous weekend, he and a few SEB deputies had completed a 50-mile ultramarathon, his sixth.
Jeez.
I know, that's crazy.
I got tired thinking about one.
I know. I don't like running, so that
I
that sentence made me tired as well.
I know.
In late June, he had planned to take part in Western States' 100-mile endurance run, a 20-plus hour trek through steep mountain terrain in Northern California. So, guy is crazy good and at running and
Yeah.
just
No thanks. None of that sounds good at all to me.
no. I'd like to hike through a lot of that, but I'm not running through it.
Yeah, I'll hike through it over several days, not just endurance for 20 hours straight.
Yeah. So, in the 6 months since he had qualified for the race, John had been going on daily runs, including trips a couple of times a month to the Punchbowl. It was an area he knew well, having spent countless hours over the years hiking and running its trail network. The hours of physical training he logged in his spare time were in order to stay in optimal shape for his job, he believed. He thought it was his duty to give 110% to the department. So just to summarize, John as a person, he works for, kind of a SWAT team type department in the sheriff's department. He's ex-special forces, great physical condition, highly trained in law enforcement and backcountry hiking and climbing, and he knows the area very well. So,
yeah, it's a good setup for, I think, and I'm not gonna ruin it for you, Mike, in the end, but it sets up for how someone like that could go missing in an area that they frequent so often.
Yeah, if I was profiling people that I thought would have an issue, maybe going missing, I would not think of John as one of those people.
Oh, absolutely not. Just even if he wasn't an ultra marathon runner and wasn't in that great of shape, just the special forces training, the stuff they go through in the Army Special Forces would allow you to survive for a significant amount of time in the wilderness in an area you probably don't know. I
think you can be safe to assume that he is going to be prepared to handle any situation out in the backcountry.
Yeah.
Whether he knows the area or not. And I think that's just due to his, military training. But being in such great physical condition also helps too. All around, I can't imagine how this guy went missing, but I'm excited to hear about it, Joe.
All right, Mike, and before we get into the timeline, let's just hear a word from our sponsor.
This episode of Locations Unknown is sponsored by Payoff.com. You've tried balance transfers in budgeting, but high interest rates and unrelenting bill cycles make it almost impossible to get out of credit card debt on your own. Instead of another new savings technique, you need a clear path out of debt, and that's what a payoff loan can do. A payoff loan is a personal loan backed by member-centric credit unions designed to help you pay off your credit cards. With rates as low as 5.99% APR and loan amounts up to $35,000, there's no hidden fees, and there's personal customer service support from Payoff to help you reach your financial goals. Some of the benefits of a payoff loan may also include potential credit score boost, 1 monthly payment, and savings from lower interest rates. So go to payoff.com/locationsunknown to learn more. Checking your loan rates won't affect your credit score. So try something new. Pay off your credit card debt with Payoff. NMLS ID number 1396805. Not all applicants may qualify. Loans only available within the United States, and loans are not available in all states. Payoff works with lending partners who originate the loans. Additional terms, conditions, and eligibility requirements may apply. More information is available at payoff.com/locationsunknown.
June 11th, 1998, the day John went missing, he informed his supervisor to tell him that he didn't want to take a new position within the department as a firearms instructor, that he was offered and instead wanted to stay as a canine deputy. John was a canine deputy for 3 years, and his dog Bosco lived with him at home. Early into his outing on that day, John came across a teacher with a group of kids whose classroom he actually had recently visited with his canine partner Bosco. John stopped to talk. He told the group of his route to the summit of a 9,400-foot Mount Baldwin Powell, 20 miles off. He said he'd be back around sunset, and then he continued running. So we don't know exactly what time John took off. It wasn't in the records, but we know immediately that, and I just wanted to set up initially the things that was going on. So it's not normally a big deal that he informed a supervisor he want to take a job.
Yeah.
But as we go on, there's going to be a lot of these little things that pop up that kind of make you wonder. So that's the little hint for the rest of the story.
Okay.
So he's running during the day, comes across this classroom he had recently visited, all these kids, and talks to him for a bit, tells him what's going on. Later that day, 2 employees of a camp along the trail saw a man who fit John's description jogging in the direction of the Baden Powell, confirming that he was still on track, essentially.
Okay.
Now we're going to fast forward to 6 p.m. that evening. A third camp employee spotted a man with a green pack heading towards the parking lot. So now we're at the point where we have a bunch of people seeing him heading to his destination. Now we have a guy heading back towards the parking lot. Shortly after that last sighting, a nearby resident told a park employee that he heard a single gunshot in the vicinity of the Punchbowl. So a little eeriness to set you up there.
Okay.
At 11 p.m. that night, Deborah, who is John's wife, reported that her husband was missing to the Palmdale Sheriff Station as he had failed to return after dark as promised, and 2 deputies drove to the Punchbowl immediately. They discovered the truck preserving it as possible crime scene and called for the department's search and rescue squad, which was deployed at 11:30 p.m. So the 2 deputies drove to the parking lot, found John's truck, and really didn't mess with it, and they called other people in right away.
We hear the report of a gunshot possibly at dusk, so
Yes.
like 8:30.
Mm-hmm.
He's reported missing at 11, and the search and rescue team is deployed by 11:30.
Yep, and they know it was they know the shot was shortly after the other park employee told them because it was reported to another park employee, and they were communicating over the radio.
So that's a pretty good turnaround time.
It's a good turnaround time, and you think you know what happened, and
Yeah.
that's kind of why I like this one. Is it seems very clear cut that either he did something to himself or something happened, but it's gonna get pretty crazy as we go on.
Okay.
So I wanted to set it up with, you could think, okay, maybe something happened. So now we're on June 12th because they deployed at 11:30 at night. So they're searching through the night. Searchers from the SEB joined the effort, and that's the Special Enforcement Bureau from Los Angeles, as did 3 more search and rescue groups, the K-9 unit and the Sheriff's Emergency Services Detail. So there's a lot of people out right away looking for John.
Yeah.
His former partner on the SWAT team, David Rathbun, joined in the search, assuming John would reappear quickly. John's tough as nails, he remembers thinking. They'll find him and bring him out. He'll probably have a sprained or broken ankle. John's family members were confident he'd be able to withstand the harsh desert. His father-in-law told a story about how John scared off a 500-pound black bear when the 2 were camping in the Sierras. Yeah, so I mean, this guy's like, he'll be fine.
Yeah, that's what I would think. And I'm not even shocked to hear he was scaring bears away.
The bear's probably crying after the event.
Yeah.
The bear's got PTSD now. So as the day wore on, and we're on the next day on the 12th, as the day wore on, there were still no signs of John. His friends and family started to worry. David Rathbun, that's his friend, is quoted, "When OJ didn't come limping out of the wilderness within the first 24 hours, we got pretty antsy." So they searched through the whole day and started kind of losing hope at the end. So now we're on to June 13th. On this day, there were searchers from a nearby Air Force base, and Army Black Hawk helicopters deployed near Mount Baden-Powell, while additional helicopters, horses, all-terrain vehicles, thermal imaging equipment, and infrared technology were deployed as well to search the Punchbowl's ravines and crevices. Searchers were airlifted to mountaintops and some of the mines along the trail. Nothing was really ever found of John. So they took out all the stops, and if you do look at the pictures, there are a ton of places where one could potentially topple, fall, get lost.
Yeah.
I think of our unfortunate one with Paul in Joshua Tree, where he was just off trail somewhere in a little crevice, and it took almost a year for them to find their remains. So you're thinking about that, and normally I would say that would be where we kind of leave it off, is maybe something happened, maybe the gunshot wasn't related, he could have got injured, fell, got knocked out, something like that. Mm-hmm. But as we get into the theories and things we start needing to include is where you can start really getting what I always call going Hollywood on the story. So go ahead, Mike.
Oh, and I was just going to say, and yeah, I don't doubt that they probably pulled all the stops out during the search, being that he was a fellow law enforcement officer. Yeah. I think, it sounds like they had everybody out there. Mm-hmm. And you look at the map of this place, it's not a huge park.
It's not.
We're not talking Glacier or, Yellowstone or, something like that. It's a pretty small, confined park. So,
and well-defined trails, too. So it's not like you're out on your own. I mean, I think it's the fact that he ran into so many people along the way. It's close to the city. I'm sure lots of people go there a lot. So it's not like he was out there.
Well-defined and, highly trafficked.
So a few interesting items that we need to include. John and his wife were married for 12 years, but were heading towards a divorce. They had a single daughter together who at the time of his disappearance was 5 years old. A month before he left his home for the last time, John had told Deborah that they thought they should go their separate ways. An ultra-marathoner named Vicky DeVita, whom John was dating, said to investigators that John had told her he planned to go on an overnight walkabout in the wilderness. Accompanied by a deputy friend of John, she spent the night in the Punchbowl calling for him, but nothing. So John tells his wife he's going for a run, but he tells his girlfriend, who he's essentially leaving his wife for, that he's going for an overnight walkabout in the wilderness. John had hoped to move in with Vicky and had requested she submit to an HIV test before the two consummated their relationship.
Did she have AIDS?
I don't know. They didn't stay, but like the fact that it started to paint this guy as kind of a goofy dude.
Yeah.
Like he's dating some girl. He's like, all right, before we consummate this, I want you to do an HIV test. Vicky died in 2010. Don't know what it was related to. I couldn't find that, but that was mentioned in the notes.
Okay.
So in the first week after John's disappearance, the department retrieved his dog Bosco from his house and boarded him at a kennel in Riverdale. Within 2 weeks, Bosco, who was 7, died. A spokesperson from the sheriff's department told reporters the cause was a ruptured artery, but his wife's mother was quoted saying Bosco had died of a broken heart. So that's just a sad part, but yeah, I think it's kind of poetic in a way how those two must have been so connected. And you've seen stories like that, like where the dog like almost can't handle it or can tell something is wrong. Mm-hmm. So just a little tidbit, not really important to the case. I feel bad for the dog.
It's interesting. Yeah, that's too bad for the dog. It's amazing that they found it, but then it died.
Well, the dog wasn't with him. It was at his house.
Oh, he didn't take the dog on the hike with him?
No.
Okay, gotcha.
So the last thing Deborah remembers John saying, now this is the morning that he was leaving to go to the Punchbowl. The last thing she remembers him saying, and remember Deborah is his current wife, that they're headed towards divorce.
Yeah.
He said to her, have a nice life. Tell Chloe I love her. And Chloe's his 5-year-old daughter. So that's a little eerie.
That's not like I'm going to be gone for a day hike and I'll see you tonight.
Exactly.
That's kind of like I'll never see you again.
That's where you start thinking that's something you say if you're going to potentially off yourself. Like something, this guy is not right. Maybe he's got some issues from his time in the service or spending that many years on a special enforcement bureau with LA in some of the areas in LA that you can imagine the stuff he's seen and been through. So you mix those together, it could be bad juju. And you have, what is it, like 22 service members a day commit suicide on average? Like it's pretty sad.
It's a sad number.
Exactly. So he's probably been through a lot of stuff. Now you add in all that. So you start thinking, okay, this sounds like a guy who's going to go off in the wilderness in a place he enjoys and just be done with life.
Yeah.
So Debbie spoke to a private investigator to find out whether John was cheating on her, but she did abandon that line of inquiry after learning that it would cost her $500. Soon she began to think her husband's goodbye seemed like that of a man planning to kill himself. In retrospect, she thought John had been acting differently. There had been a cold, intense look in his eye the final time she saw him, and a month before, during an argument about their relationship, he held a loaded gun to his temple as he drove on the freeway. And he screamed, "What do you want me to do? Kill myself?" Shocked, Deborah burst into tears in the passenger seat.
I would say that's more than just acting a little strange or differently.
Yeah, there's a stability issue there. So something's going on in this guy's life.
I don't think it's normal for people to hold a loaded gun to their head and
no, not
yell.
At all. While driving a car on a freeway.
Yeah, I would say that's more than just acting a little differently, but maybe you get used to somebody acting, strange if they're like that way for a while. I don't know. That just seems incredibly bizarre to me.
Absolutely. And on top of it, you have this thing too, and this is something that's very typical, or at least I've seen of people who are going to commit suicide and they start giving away personal belongings or things that they feel belong to them. So he had packed up his running medals as well as climbing and hiking memorabilia that he had been on the wall of a spare room and returned a family heirloom bookshelf to his in-laws. John also gave a gold necklace to his father's to DeVita, and that's the lady who was dating.
Yeah.
So he's giving away all of his personal stuff to people he cares about. So that's going to bring us into the full theories. The LA Sheriff's Department believe the most likely committed suicide. They jumped right to the suicide. Family members did not believe that John would commit suicide because he was so close to his daughter, Chloe. His brother is quoted, "I never believed it for a minute. The guy had too much pride," said his nephew. "And I'd put that on the back burner and rule it out," Scott Griff's a close friend who frequently went on ride-alongs with John. Felt the deputy simply had no reason to kill himself. I mean, he had a zest for life. He recalled how his friends seemed happy about the new relationship he was starting with Davida. So now that's where you can start twisting about maybe he's not going to kill himself, but he is just done with his current marriage. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but his coldness and the things he's doing are more pointed towards maybe he's just done with his wife and he's giving those things away to cut ties with that, but then he's giving his necklace to his potential future father-in-law. And trying to move on with this other person.
I think
there's that.
I mean, yeah, I guess you could say that, friends think he had a zest for life, but I still go back to, instant like holding a loaded gun to your head driving down the freeway. That's not somebody that has a zest for life. That's somebody that I think has a mental condition.
Yep, and devil's advocate, and going along with what you're saying too, it reminds me also of when you hear people that threaten to commit suicide are not typically the ones who do it, it's the ones who you never suspect would potentially do it. And it's another sad, true aspect of that when sometimes people are not well, they don't show signs of it, or they're very minute signs or things like that. So there's still, I'd say it's not off the table.
Yeah.
Based on the evidence of witnesses, of what a witness heard. But still what baffles me, and I don't want to get too far, but if he did commit suicide along the trail, why didn't they find him?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, unless he committed suicide by like jumping into a ravine or a crevasse or something, you would assume that he would have committed suicide in a fashion that would have left his body discoverable, because usually they leave a note.
And you look at the gunshot. If it's the gunshot and he did that, there would be all the things that happen when you shoot yourself. And it's not like you can hide that stuff. And they were searching for him within hours, and they had dogs out and things like that. So there's that. I'll leave it at that, and we'll keep moving on because there's a lot more other stuff that's going to start happening here.
Okay.
So there was a theory that Jonathan had been killed by a fellow deputy as part of a plan to hush up links to the meth world. The Los Angeles Sheriff's Special Enforcement Bureau had been embroiled in a long legal case and investigation relating to corruption involving meth production and trafficking. There were rumors circulating within Antelope Valley stations that deputies were warning meth players of pending drug busts. In the early 1990s, a 5-year internal investigation led to the indictment of 35 deputies who'd stolen millions of dollars from drug dealers. FBI video surveillance captured a sergeant and 2 narcotics detectives taking $30,000 from a drug dealer's hotel room. A detective assigned to the elite narcotics team was arrested for hiding $150,000 stolen by a colleague. So you're starting to get into that corrupt cop type stuff.
Yeah.
And it started to change the narrative of what possibly could have happened.
Now that, to me, is very believable. You've seen this play out in a lot of big cities across the country. I think of the
Training Day?
The movies, but I mean, even actual documentaries. I can't remember the name of it now, but it follows these cops in New York City, I think in the 80s. And similar kind of stuff. They would steal money off of, criminals during arrests. They were selling drugs and, all this kind of stuff. And so I can definitely see something like that being one possible theory to what happened to him. He got mixed up with the wrong people, and maybe he went to meet someone in, the Punchbowl, and things went south, and now he's, missing.
All right. Well, I'm going to keep going. Don't sew it shut just yet, Mike. You're going to hear a lot more information than
okay.
And then I want to get a raw read from you before I tell you what I think. So,
all right.
A few days after John vanished, a woman linked to the Antelope Valley's outlaw bikers called the sheriff's department to report she'd heard that John had come across a meth lab and was taken care of, quote unquote. Then a tip came in from an informant who said a biker dealer claimed that after the deputy discovered something on his jog, he was going to be a hero and was taken care of before being put in a hole.
Okay.
Separate investigations by the FBI, by a sheriff's homicide detective, and the Operation Silent Thunder Drug Task Force, which John had been a part of, turned up similar intelligence. Years later, John's former boss, Mike Bauer, began to suspect that a different deputy, someone who's now retired, had murdered John. There were plenty of stories, but none were confirmed. A woman claimed to know where his body was buried, and a man contacted a task force saying he was present when the deputy was murdered. A third person reported seeing John return to his truck in the Devil's Punchbowl parking lot at dusk before walking back out with his backpack in the direction of two armed bikers. The witness then heard screaming. Deputy Randall Herbert, I'm going to butcher this name now, Herberly, I think that's what it is, insists that when he arrived at the Punchbowl after John was reported missing, he spotted a snub-nosed .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver on the center console of the truck. And he's quoted, "No deputy back then would leave their gun visible. The chance that a passerby might see it, break into the vehicle, and use the gun to commit a crime was too high. It's not just a red flag," he says. It's full-on fireworks. 4th of July. He says he reported the gun to the others on the site, but the official missing persons flyers stated that John was likely carrying the gun. "My recollection is that we could not account for his 2-inch revolver," says Dave Sauer, the sergeant who led the search. Now, this is where the story and conspiracy gets crazy. It's I know there's I just threw so much information at you. We're going to come back to it, but actually no, let's recap now because I'm going to get into some other stuff that's later. So it looked like clear-cut suicide. Yeah. Then with a couple more things of information, it looks like he might be entangled in some underground stuff and got caught up doing bad cop stuff. Yeah. Then new information comes that makes it seem like he actually was a good cop and potentially got killed by either meth lab people, bikers, or bad cops for trying to out bad cops. Yeah. So I like to always pretend that the people on our show are good people. So right now, I like the idea that he was going to make some big bust and he's a super cop like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson from Baywatch, even though he's not a cop, but he wanted to be one. Yeah. Or he's acting like one. And he's going to go take care of this because he's a badass. You know, he's special forces. He fights off bears, and it just didn't work out for him. So we're gonna stop there. Okay. Do you have any comments before we go forward?
No, I at first I was leaning towards suicide. And then as you were talking about, maybe another deputy killed him, he was entangled in, the meth underworld. That seemed pretty plausible. But I like the good guy. He was a good guy that was in the wrong spot at the wrong time, similar to our first case.
Exactly. That brings us right back to episode 1 with Paul. Yeah. So, as I said, this is where the story and conspiracy gets a little crazier. In May of 2018, now we're later in the year, Darren Hager, a deputy with Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, received a jury award of $4.5 million upon their finding that Hager was wrongfully terminated in retaliation for looking too closely into this disappearance. In December of 1999, Hager arrested a man who offered to become an informant against 5 major methamphetamine manufacturers and distributors in the Antelope Valley. He not only provided leads for ongoing drug investigations, he reported a rumor that a certain deputy was involved in John's disappearance. Then in January of 2000, LASD homicide detective received permission to reopen the case, and after 3 months of investigation, he concluded that another deputy was involved in the drug trade and was a prime suspect in the murder of John. Allegedly, the homicide captain refused to authorize a search warrant, took the detective off the case, and threatened to terminate the detective if he continued with that case. So in March of 2000, a joint narcotics task force was formed targeting the major meth dealers in the Antelope Valley. Hager was the LASD member of the DEA task force. Now, this is the guy who later on, in 2018, so just a few years ago, was awarded that $4.5 million for being terminated for all this. The then Assistant Sheriff Larry Waldy ordered Hager to investigate the narcotics with the DEA, but to only document, not to investigate any information obtained on John or any corrupt deputies, which was to be later turned over to Homicide or the LASD Internal Criminal Investigation Bureau. Hager considered the DEA task force investigation an enormous success. The 11th month investigation led to 290 state arrests and 32 federal convictions for narcotics manufacturing and trafficking. And as he was instructed, Hager said he turned over the information he obtained relating to John and any corrupt deputies to his lieutenant, who transmitted it up the chain of command. Hager said he was then subject to an 11th month investigation by Internal Affairs Bureau, which he contended was retaliation for reporting the information about corrupt deputies. On July 28, 2003, he was terminated from his job. Hager then filed a lawsuit with the LA County Superior Court against the Sheriff's Department and the county for retaliation and wrongful termination. He argued that since he was hired in February of 1998, he was rated outstanding for his last 3 reviews in 99, 2000, 2001, and in 2002 he went to Washington, D.C. to be presented with the DEA's Administrator Award for his work on the task force, and that such termination was improper. After his termination, Hager said he was unable to find work because of the nature of the charges made against him: reckless investigation, disobeying orders, and making false statements to his superiors. The defense argued that John committed suicide and that the supposed corrupt deputies involved in the death was disproven by the February to April 2001 homicide investigation of John's disappearance. The defense also contended that Hager falsely misrepresented and reported information to superiors that was allegedly obtained from both informants and federal wiretaps about the claimed corrupt deputy. Now the jury, as we know, returned the verdict in favor of Hager, awarding him $806,000 for past lost earnings, $1.2 million for future lost earnings, and $2.5 million for non-economic damages, totaling to $4.5 million. So this screams deep state cover-up at the highest level in California law enforcement.
Yeah, I mean, that's it could be a possible theory.
So that's the information I have. I want to hear your thoughts on this.
Okay, well, like we do with every case, I kind of going through the most likely.
Do we think it was animal attack?
I do not think it was animal attack. That area doesn't have any predators that are going to kill someone of John's skill.
Yeah, not John. Not John.
So I don't think it's animal attack. I think a possibility is he had an accident, fell. That would be, I guess, unlikely because he wasn't going out there to hike that day. He was going out to run.
Yep.
So he was staying on the trail. He wasn't going to be, free climbing or anything like that. So there's no reason to expect that he was off the trail kind of bushwhacking around and he fell somewhere. So is it possible? Yes. Likely, probably not. I think suicide is a possible theory. The way he was acting with, holding the gun to his head and kind of the look in his eyes, and, sounds like he's been going through, trouble with his marriage. He's giving away all of his stuff. I think suicide is a very possible theory, but I think it's also unlikely in the sense that they didn't find his body. Most of the suicides we've read about in, people that go out in the woods and commit suicide, they do it in an area where they're going to be found because they leave a suicide note, and they're going to find the person if they do that.
Yep. I totally agree.
So again, is suicide likely? I think it could be the way he was acting, but in this case, I don't know if that's what he was doing. I mean, maybe he was giving away his stuff because he was just going to disappear himself and move somewhere else. But so I think that's a possible theory. I definitely could see him being involved in maybe the drug underworld, and something went haywire and he was killed by another dirty cop. I mean, how many movies are there about that? Training Day. There's another good one that I watched.
And a lot of them are based off of, not obviously exactly how it happened, but they're based on true events or true stories of actual people.
Yeah. So a lot of those movies are, loosely based on real events that have happened in the world. And to be honest, a while back, I can't remember the name of the book now, but I read a book about how the federal government, or certain agents in the federal government, were literally shipping narcotics up from South America through Air Force bases in Texas into Southern California.
And they were giving away fully automatic weapons to drug cartel members and tracking them, but then they forgot to track them. Remember that? So they just gave weapons away. So I mean, it spans all types of administrations, from top federal down to local. There's tons of stories of that happening.
Yeah, I think it wasn't Iran-Contra. It was the federal government, and this is all allegedly. Obviously, nothing, I don't think, ever will come out, definitively proving this happened. But back in the 80s, allegedly, certain elements of the federal government were selling narcotics in Southern California to fund revolutions down in South America. And this spanned all various departments of law enforcement, and really fascinating book. But so getting back to the case, I think it's definitely possible that he was tied up in some kind of, bunch of dirty cops are, selling drugs, or, taking bribes to give safe passage to drug dealers. So that went to, surprise me at all. And kind of your final theory that it's more deep state than just a couple dirty cops, that maybe the whole department's infected with people that are, dirty, and you've got these, detectives trying to do investigations and they're getting shut down by their superiors. That's happened in real life.
Yep.
A lot of cops have gone to jail because of doing that very thing. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility that he went to the Punchbowl to meet some of these cops and they got rid of him because he was becoming too big of a problem, or he's about to go public with something, or who knows. So I like those, I'm on the train of either he was a dirty cop and something went south, or he was a good guy and discovered too much and they took him out.
So I'm going to blow right past all those other ones that you said, because I agree with you. No animal. Yep. I do not think suicide.
No.
I think he was acting goofy. I think acting goofy could be attributed to him either coming to terms. So I'm going to go two routes here. Either he's an accomplice of some nefarious things, meaning he started to grow a conscience at some point, started giving things away, knowing that something bad could have happened, and he was going to blow the lid open, and they took care of him.
Yeah.
Or it's true deep state type stuff, and there's the double edge of this. So it's either deep state stuff and they took care of him because he was getting onto it and he was being super cop and trying to end all the corruption, and they're not going to allow that to happen.
Yeah.
And then this other guy, Hager, was lucky enough that he didn't get offed when he started reporting all that stuff. They just tried destroying his reputation, but it sounds very obvious that this guy had all these commendations. He did such a great job. And then as soon as he turns in all this information on corruption in the LAPD, all of a sudden he's getting all these, well, he's a terrible person. He lies. He does all this crap. It's very clear that's bull.
Yeah.
And obviously the jury thought so as well by awarding him $4.5 million in 2018. But now if I'm going to go Hollywood on this,
Please
it could also be that he is now in a witness protection program, and he is helping to continue to uncover all this stuff.
Yeah.
And his death was faked so that he could do this, because honestly, and this is where I don't even want to say it's too much Hollywood, and that does sound like a script to a movie. If you have corruption in the LAPD going up the chain that high, that's no longer a local issue. That is a federal big deal, like Department of Justice type stuff. And if this guy reached out to the right people, now, and why I think that is because he was in Special Forces, the military. So he's got contacts that are higher up in the federal level. So if he's seeing something going on and he needs to take care of it, all the things he was doing was not necessarily suicide flags. They were, I'm going to be gone flags.
Yeah.
And he knew he was going to be gone. And that's the one thing, because if someone thought he was getting too close and followed him out there and did him in at the end of the night,
Yeah.
that's unprepared. But he seemed to be prepared to be gone.
That's a good point.
And that's what tripped me, because I thought about this quite a bit, because like you can point to any of those things,
Yeah.
but when you look at everything together, if he's acting suicidal, sounds suicidal, it's either because he's suicidal or something else bigger is happening. Okay,
Yep.
So that means he's not going to be surprised, because he's basically preparing for something to happen. So he's either preparing for something bad to happen, or he knows what's going to happen, and he's setting up his loved ones in the best way he can without tipping them off, because he knows they're going to be interviewed. He knows that they're going to be questioned by the corrupt deputies and cops that he's going to be indicting potentially.
So basically, he knew one of two things was going to happen. Maybe he knew that either he comes forward and he's going to go in WITSEC. That's best case scenario. Worst case scenario, they get to him first. So he's probably under a lot of pressure leading up to when this was going to happen. There's probably like a date or a time and place. Maybe it was in the Punchbowl.
That's where I'm thinking he doesn't think something. I'm leaning more towards he knows he's going into WITSEC at a certain time.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a man who's getting his affairs in order, and because when you read about him and his friends talk about him, he doesn't seem unstable until all of a sudden you're like, all right, a month before this incident, he's pointing a loaded gun at his head and screaming at his wife on the freeway. All of a sudden, these changes start occurring. So he must have, something happened, or he came across something, and he's working with federal government, and he's preparing to go into WITSEC to basically out all of this. And his way of doing that is basically what would look like someone who's about to commit suicide.
Now, what if before WITSEC, maybe he had to go to this location in the Punchbowl, there had to be one final meetup to get the evidence they needed, and something went south and they shot him.
I think that could be too.
Maybe he never
he was
made it
wearing a wire and he was going to meet somebody.
Yeah, maybe they're like, all right, we need you to go do this one more thing, then we'll have the evidence we need. You can go to WITSEC, these people go to jail, and then he goes there and maybe they were tipped off and shot him.
I think that's very possible based on the testimony of those witnesses, like that biker lady,
Yep.
From the Outlaws and the other people. So I think there's a lot to unpack, and I feel like this Hager guy got too close, and lucky for him,
he didn't end up
got fired.
In the Punchbowl as well.
Yeah, he just got fired, and it'd be interesting to see if, like you hear about these people who claim to have told them that they knew where the body was and they knew this, and they reported it to these cops and nothing ever came of it. Is it because they buried it?
Yeah. Well,
so
yeah, that's interesting. Out of all the cases we've done, I think this is the first case where I don't think there's any reason to believe that the wilderness caused this guy's disappearance.
Oh, absolutely not.
Every other one of our cases, there's always been kind of a part of me that thinks, well, maybe they could have fallen, attacked by a bear or some kind of predator or exposure. But in this case, I don't think the Punchbowl had anything to do with this other than he was there at a specific time for a specific reason, and now he's missing.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. So I'll just say with that, I'm excited because we've been getting, as our podcast grows, because what do we do, like 7,200 downloads last month or something, like our biggest month ever?
Yeah, we had our biggest month ever last month, and we were over 50,000 downloads now for the show, which
it's a big milestone.
It's a big milestone. Joe and I never thought we'd get here. And I mean, after the first couple months of doing it, we were only getting, I think the first month we only got 200 downloads,
which was a big for us at that time.
Yeah.
But what I love about having this many people listen to the show is we're starting to get people messaging us their theories more so than ever before. And
yeah.
It's awesome because there's things people are saying that are some are nutty, some are funny, some are just but they make us think differently. Even like the craziest theories, they make us start thinking about things differently.
Yeah, I apologize. I can't remember the lady's name. She messaged us about Charles McCuller.
I didn't read the full thing yet. She wrote like a whole epitaph.
Yeah, it was really good.
And I read some of it, and I was like, okay, I got to dive into this, and we should let's read it and dissect it, and maybe even do like a quick short episode or something where we can talk about it.
It was really good. A great theory. Essentially, she thought that maybe he tried to hang himself, and that's why all the clothing fell in kind of a straight pile on the ground.
All right. Don't say anymore.
I won't say anymore.
We're gonna do like a shorty. I don't even know what we'd call it. Like kind of like the Bear Boy one. We'll do like a update.
We could do an episode with a couple updates from previous cases with
I like it.
But yeah, before we go, we've got 2 more episodes. We'll have one more kind of case related episode coming up, and then we're gonna wrap up kind of the spring series of shows with a really fun episode about Area 51.
Well, that would be good. Yeah, we'll do as if you've been listening to us since we started. We always do kind of a little break over summer. Because we like to enjoy summer because we get so little summer in Wisconsin. Yes. And B, because sometimes we just need a break.
Yeah, Joe. I know Joe is super busy. He's got a whole brood of children and lots of irons in the fire.
And you got a wedding to plan for. Mike's getting married.
Yeah.
He's off the market, ladies.
Yeah.
You've been off the market, but you're finally just getting married. So that's good.
So that'll happen later in the fall. But the final episode will probably be released around the 4th of July, and it's going to be a really fun episode on Area 51. I'm sure, obviously, Area 51's been talked about for
ad nauseum.
So why not add another voice into the mix? But we'll do it.
I'm sure we'll have fun with it. I'm sure we'll piss people off.
We'll do it in our own little way that we do cases like the Alaska Triangle and things like that. So it'll be a fun episode, and then we'll have some information on a promotion for playing cards coming up. And what else, Joe? I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've missed. Oh, we had our first Patreon patron.
Patreon.
Yeah. So we'll give a shout out to him in our post on Facebook, but like we always say, if you want to help the show out, please feel free, head over to Patreon. We updated kind of the benefits at different levels, so some of the levels will allow we can get on Zoom hangouts and chat about cases and hiking, backcountry hiking, whatever you want to talk about. So check out Patreon, and if you want to help the show out, you like listening, go over there. The lowest level is $1. So I think if we have we've got over 14,000 followers on Facebook, so if everyone just gave $1 each, we could really up the production value.
You could go do this full time. Yeah. I'll still do it part time. I gotta feed 6 people. I can't quit for that.
No, you need the Joe Rogan money.
Everyone needs Joe Rogan money. Are you kidding me? What do you get, like $100 million for Spotify? $100 million.
Yeah.
I thought my post on that was very funny. My wife didn't think it was that funny. I thought it was funny.
It was pretty
funny.
But
anyway, well, we appreciate all of you, our loyal listeners, and our sponsors that help keep the show going. And remember, when enjoying the beauty of nature, whether backpacking, camping, or just taking a walk, always remember to leave no trace. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.